Hey there, and welcome to That News You Care About, a weekly video game news show from the folks over at That Nerdy Site. Today is Tuesday, October 20th, 2020, and I'm one of your hosts, Logan Wilkinson. Joining me this week is my Phoenix son, Trevor Starkey. How you doing, Trev?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Doing good. Always a pleasure to do a tri-person That News You Care About pod. Speaking of which, our other guest this week is the biggest Islanders fan west of the Mississippi, Cameron Abbott.
That's actually a really good one.
Yeah, thank you.
That's pretty good.
I tried really hard. Yeah.
There's not too many of us out the west.
I can't imagine there are too many Islander fans in Arizona.
Yeah, no, I was actually waiting for you to be like, and my other Arizona, like Phoenix Sun or whatever, I was gonna be like, no, I am not the Phoenix Sun. I am the autumn moon of Arizona.
Because I had said some sort of Arizona sports team last time, and you were like, "I'm not an Arizona sports."
Oh yeah,
fan.
you're
That's
like
right. You're a Long Islander guy. Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, like the Diamondbacks. I was like,
yeah.
Nobody's been a real Diamondbacks fan in years, man.
Since Randy Johnson left.
I don't know. Like him and Kurt Schilling kind of got marred reputations at this point.
What's wrong with Randy Johnson?
Randy Johnson? He's if I recall correctly, I'm pretty sure he's a Trump supporter.
I know Kurt Schilling was.
Yeah,
I
Schilling
don't know
was,
Randy Johnson
definitely.
was.
Randy Johnson. I don't know. Maybe Randy Johnson is just like an old man who just wants to be quiet, and hopefully people forget that the most Googled thing about him is that he one time exploded a bird with his fastball.
Dude, it's incredible.
That's exactly what I think about when I think of Randy Johnson.
It's absolutely incredible if you watch that clip. How are you doing, Cam?
One sec. There's an actual question people ask. Did the bird that Randy Johnson hit die? And it's like, yeah, it exploded.
Yeah, obviously.
The bird is very much dead. Also, it's been like 20 plus years since it happened. Anyway, our podcast this week is unfortunately not about exploding birds and Randy Johnson. Wish it was. No, it is a Game of the Year update. The kind of original idea I had for this is, as me and Trevor talked about last week with the launch of the next-gen consoles, basically a month away, a little bit less now. I wanted to do kind of one last Game of the Year update discussion before all of the next-gen consoles and next-gen games, and just the games from October, November, December kind of all descend upon us. So we each are going to kind of run down our Game of the Year so far into the year, kind of go over the one or two games it might be, and then we're also going to talk about what we think the industry as a whole is going to kind of coalesce around in terms of the Game of the Year discussion. Trev, you drew the short straw, so you get to go first. What is your Game of the Year or Game of the Years so far in 2020? Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
They were digital straws on my end.
So we did. You mentioned before we started recording that you hadn't really gotten a sense of where Cam and I were at on this, but we did do on a That Nerdy Site show a couple months back. I think me, Cam, and Frank, I believe, sat down and kind of it wasn't really one of the topics we anticipated diving into, but it just kind of spun out into that on the show where we kind of did
show, yeah.
Yeah, we did a Game of the Year so far kind of check in with everybody. And I looking through my GG app. I've got I could make the case for 6 or 7 at this point already.
Oh, wow.
I have a front runner, and then basically a whole bunch of others that I'm like, but if that front runner weren't in the cards, here are the games. So some of the names I'll throw out there, and one of them certainly has come up in the time since we did that. I'll throw out Hades right off the bat. I think I'm surprised, especially at how much I've become addicted to Hades. I'm somewhere up over 30 plus clears at this point in that game. I've seen the ending and then the epilogue true ending kind of thing in it. And as somebody who is very traditionally against roguelikes, the fact that it has sucked me in the way it has and has really done a great job to assuage all of my concerns and the things that usually keep me away from roguelikes, Hades absolutely deserves a shout for that. And also, just this last week, I sat down with all of the No-Clip documentary episodes developing Hell leading up to kind of Hades. I believe there's one more episode still to come now, kind of like to discuss like post-launch how the launch went for them. I'm not sure when that's going to hit, but just kind of like getting engulfed in that game and then going into and seeing the behind the scenes nature of making the game, including, you know, having to basically finish that game in quarantine as that team has. It was a really cool kind of experience. So that's one that I certainly haven't really in this context been able to sing praises on yet. And then a couple others that I just want to give a little bit of love to. Shoutouts for Spiritfarer is a very special game. It doesn't quite. It's not quite doing enough for me to really give it like Game of the Year stuff, but it has one of the most emotionally resonant moments of the year for me personally, just because of what my year has been like and some of the stuff I went through. And it's just a very charming, beautiful game about, you know, about dealing with loss and kind of coming to terms and grieving and that kind of stuff. You play basically the Spiritfarer, and you kind of help guide people to the other side, effectively is what that game is. And it's all done through gameplay of like little platforming and kind of a farm simulation kind of thing. And so it's like part Harvest Moon, part Stardew Valley, part I'm trying to think of some of the like the choose your own adventure kind of things. It's not really choose your own adventure, but it's just a very beautiful game that deserves some love too. And I've got a couple others that we'll probably dive into at some point in this conversation. But without belaboring anymore, my front runner right now is Final Fantasy VII Remake.
That feels like an eternity ago. God,
it does. Yeah, that's a game that came out like very early on in the quarantine. And as somebody who is a lifelong fan of the Final Fantasy series, even if I am increasingly having to come to terms with not liking the last, you know, half dozen games in the series or something like that. I guess it hadn't been that many, but like 12 on, I have not been huge fans of. But 7 Remake did a great job of like recapturing the magic of Final Fantasy VII, and modernizing it and doing a great job in just, it has some of the most fun combat in anything I've played this year. And I love what it does, without getting into spoilers, to the Final Fantasy VII story and how it kind of twists some things on their head that leave me very, very excited for where they're going to take the series moving forward. Beautiful game, a lot of fun, and yeah, I played through it, and then I played through it again on hard mode and got the platinum, and it's something that like I'm itching to go back and revisit here even before the end of the year. I don't know if I will with everything else coming out here in the next couple of months, but I definitely, as we're getting into kind of this end of the year, like I very much want to revisit it. At least like I very much will at least see myself going back and revisiting the opening bombing mission game to just kind of enjoy that excitement and diving in and fighting the guard scorpion again.
Yeah, Final Fantasy VII is one where I don't know. Maybe I could definitely see myself at least playing some of that maybe for the game. And also because like I still am looking for that Final Fantasy game I can love. So I could see myself doing some sort of thing like playing at least the opening, like you're speaking to, or at least to some point of that for like the Game of the Year discussion, and maybe I'll really love it. That's definitely on my list of like games to get to in that kind of late November, early December period, as we kind of do Game of the Year and whatnot. Cam, do you have any? I hope Final Fantasy VII Remake is not also your Game of the Year, but even if it is, do you have any? Yeah, do you have any Final Fantasy thoughts?
Yeah, I do. I think that Final Fantasy VII Remake, the thing that might, I think, hurt its chances at getting the Game of the Year award from a lot of places is probably just time.
Yeah.
it's definitely a game that has, unfortunately, with the bubble that is COVID, memories of the before times feel so long ago, and so it's a struggle of there is so much that's come out this year in the COVID bubble that has just been like these breath of fresh airs where we didn't know that we do know we needed them and we need them. Entertainment is one of the only things I think keeping all of us sane and together right now. But I think that there exists for me at least, there exists a definitive point that I love that game. Mm-hmm. I think it's incredible. I think that it's the story on the like different levels that it tells between retelling the story, improving it, making changes, and also how those changes will resonate going forward is an incredible deep discussion that we had the pleasure of doing earlier this year in a special episode of That Nerdy Site Show with one Brandon Gann, friend of the show. But I have to say, there's been other things that have come out since then that I think have... It's interesting, because like Final Fantasy VII Remake like is a game that just shouldn't exist. It's incredibly good, and it shouldn't work, but it does in such an incredible way that it's... Let's just be real. Game of the Year this year is going to be a tough one. Because games have meant something different than they have in previous years. Mm. So it's definitely up there for me. Like, it is definitely one of my favorite games of this year. So,
what is your Game of the Year frontrunner right now?
You know, it's probably going to come as a surprise to a lot of people, except for those very close to me who know me very, very well. But it's definitely going to have to be Hatsune Miku Project Diva for the Nintendo Switch.
Is that like for real?
I couldn't tell either if it was for real or not. I was like, I don't know if that's I was like, I've never even heard of this.
No, Hatsune Miku is like a Vocaloid, which is a 3D anime girl that's not real.
Yeah, no, I remember the VR like Hatsune Miku thing from the IP Extra Life a few years back, right? Am I thinking of the right character?
Yeah, that's the right character. You're right.
Yeah,
she's by far the most popular one.
I really enjoy the dead silence you get from each other for a second. We're just like, is he doing a bit, or is it actually gonna be that?
I was like 95% sure it was a bit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was like, I wouldn't put it past Cam for some weird thing like that to just sneak up and
slip in, yeah,
and take him by surprise.
Here's the thing. I couldn't tell you the name of a Hatsune Miku song. I have no idea. I don't like Vocaloid's just not something I deal with. No, but honestly, if I'm being real honest about what I think my Game of the Year is, like, it's a dead heat for a couple of games.
Yeah.
And until things settle with, like, here's the thing. I need to play Cyberpunk to give like a firm answer of what I'm feeling. But right now, the leaders for me are Hades, which is just for the reasons Trevor mentioned, phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And we gushed about it. Like, Hades is so good, I forgot that I even played Genshin Impact that week. Like, that's how good Hades is. It literally said, what game was I playing on the PlayStation 4? I know I've been playing my PS4 at some point this week. What was I doing? I can't even remember. Hades is just so good that it literally saw the memory of Genshin Impact and said, get out of here, and kicked it out. Like, I forgot I even had it installed on my PS4. Like, it was that good. It is that good, rather.
Have you gotten that clear yet? That first clear?
I'm on clear 2. I finished clear 2. I have gotten, like, it is to the point where it is rare that I don't make it to Hades himself.
Yeah, I remember having that bump where, like, I could always get to Hades for a long bit there, and then depending on my build was really what was the, like, am I actually going to win, or am I going to go in with, like, 4 lives to spare, and he's just going to still eat my lunch?
I don't really get my lunch eaten anymore. I don't think I had gotten my lunch eaten since that first time I fought him. But like I've gotten to the point now where I'm trying to tailor my boons in a way that will get me to him, while at the same time giving me enough leverage to move past him. I found like Demeter stuff is like super good about that. Been leaning heavily on her between her ice crystals and her ice vortex call. But anyway, this is getting too inside baseball for what we're looking for here.
Yeah.
Hades is definitely up there for me. I played it originally back when it first got into early access years ago when it was announced at the Game Awards. Found that it was absolutely fantastic, but I realized I'm like, this is going to be a while before this game is finished, so I just put it down and haven't picked it back up until I bought it for Switch. Been playing through that; it's incredible. Let's see here. Other games that leap out to me that are definitely like up there for me are gonna be Ghost of Tsushima. I've really found myself deeply attached to that game. I played through my first playthrough of it in the Kurosawa mode, which that alone, like, it let me play through a pretty good like samurai movie, and it was done in a way that I felt was fantastic, like true to the spirit of the art that it was trying to like bring forward, like the art it was trying to evoke. Like, this is not a, and I think there was a lot of concern about national, like, because there is a distinct issue right now in modern Japanese politics where the people, like the current Japanese society, very much looks at like the past is the past. We don't have, like, we should move on from it. We shouldn't be held by it. And because of that, there's been a lot of outright like lies and propaganda to obscure war crimes that the country has committed in the past. And so there's massive concern, especially considering that the major government in Japan right now is an authoritarian party. And it's like it's very, like, it can be very concerning when you look at it from that lens. But when you look at it, when you hear from the team who made the game, when you understand what their passion was, what their intent was for that game, it was not to make like a national piece. It was very much to be like, we love these old movies. We want to make a game like these movies. And so having enough time to like put out Kurosawa mode in that game, just like, you can just definitely feel the cinematography in that game is just so superb, and it is just so in line with the practices of, you know, Akira Kurosawa, like, and many other directors who had deeply inspired it. You can tell by some of the side quests that they chose to basically emulate parts of like very famous samurai films and even some niche ones. It's absolutely phenomenal. The game is stunning. It is beautiful. Like, and then playing it again in color is great. The recent add-on pack that they did with Legends of the Ghosts, or Ghosts of Legends, the most recent multiplayer update that they did for the game, is absolutely incredible. Like,
Yeah, we Logan and I hopped in on that over the weekend. We had a ton of fun with it.
yeah, it's outright phenomenal. Like, the game might not have been what people, like, quote unquote needed or thought they wanted at the time, but for like being like a solid, like, I'd say B-level story, like samurai story, which by no means, like, the A-level samurai stories are some of the greatest stories ever told in cinema. So to get a B-level one is solid, not a problem. Man, no, like, it's just such a great game. I can't heap enough praise on it. It really is beautiful and wonderful and plays incredible. The idea that they've like taken the 4 parts of Jin's kind of move set and like combat set and spread it out to 4 different characters for the Legends is really cool. I've been playing Assassin, of course. Like, it's so good.
That's what I did.
But I played with a samurai, and the samurai just like cleans house too. It's great. Like, the game's great. Really enjoy it. Another game that I would say is up there for me has got to be... Sorry, one moment. I just got a message. I have to look at this. That's not good. Sorry, give me just a moment, you guys. I have to take care of this real quick.
Yeah. While Cam is doing that, I mean, I would say that for me, I mean, Cameron, as Trevor kind of already knows, as he mentioned, we played Ghosts this weekend and finished all of Legends in one sitting. which I think is a testament to how much we enjoyed it and how much fun that was. And in that, I talked to Trevor about the fact that Ghost right now is my game of the year. I think Cameron actually touched on something that I actually resonate quite a bit which is the fact that my expectations weren't super super high for Ghost. I feel like it wasn't even on my radar that much. Like I saw obviously the trailers and everything, but like that looks super beautiful, like super cool, but like the buzz around it I feel like wasn't like super high, and so I was like, okay, it's probably gonna be like a good game. And then
it was very much having to live in the shadow of Last of Us Part 2 based on just like its release date.
Yeah, to a large degree, right? And there was so much driven around The Last of Us Part 2 and that whole conversation and discourse. And I think hopping into Ghost, I was so pleasantly surprised by how much I just fell in love with this game. And a lot of this is obviously stuff that me and Trevor have talked about, just like one-on-one a lot. But I genuinely really love Ghost. I talked about it over the weekend with him, where it's like I think legitimately becoming one of my favorite games of all time. Like it just does so much right. Like first off, it is very much in the running for being one of the most beautiful games I've ever played. I mean, it is like I'm just genuinely constantly taken aback by how good looking this video game is and how beautiful and how vibrant that world is and the color palette they get to explore with, right? And the fact that it's just like based on this actual island, and that's just this island is super beautiful, is an added layer. I really love the story of Ghost actually, so I might even bump it up even higher than the B that Cam was talking about. Like I think it's a really like thoughtful and compelling story. I love almost every side quest I kind of engage in. I'm really fascinated and intrigued by. I love the legends kind of stories you can accompany along the way and kind of the mythological infused elements of those, and then that obviously being expanded on in the multiplayer side of things that they opened up, and then just that world, I think, right? Like I'm someone who I've enjoyed open world games. I've enjoyed these kind of bigger worlds that you can kind of explore, right? Like I like I like the Far Cry games, well I guess some of them, and I like these kind of things, but Ghost is really one of the ones that I feel like has most dug its claws in me in terms of really hooking me on just exploring everything and going everywhere, right? Like, I'm someone who usually just hits all the main story beats, and then from there will kind of disperse out into the rest of the world, and Ghost just constantly has me stumbling on a new, like, side mission or stumbling on a new character with like a cool arc of their own, or stumbling on like this town to rescue and fight the Mongols and everything. Like there's so much happening in this world in a way that feels both organic and natural and also feels compelling in its own right, that I constantly keep kind of wanting to see that story through and that story through and that story through. And I can't remember if it was Trevor that I talked to about this or it was someone else that I was talking to about Ghost, but it is one of the best encapsulations of games are more like a season than a movie. Like it feels like I'm going on like multiple different episodes within this larger kind of overarching narrative in Ghost, and I find that really satisfying and really compelling. And it is just absolutely a blast to play. Like the actual combat, the stealth side of things, like scoping out a town, then going in everything. And then, God forbid, once you actually upgrade Jin a little bit and you can just really start cleaning through people, it just becomes perfect, endless loop that you get to do over and over and over again. Obviously, it has become like its own little bit of a joke, as like I've spent way more time playing this game than I thought I would, which has delayed, obviously, the Ghost spoiler cast. Sorry about that. It's my fault. And so, but it's just because I keep stumbling on other things within the world to do. And yeah, so Ghost is definitely my game of the year so far. In terms of other kind of big challengers to that, one that it won't win my game of the year and it won't ultimately be my top 5, but I do feel like I should just give a shout out to like Warzone. just because of, and I talked a little bit on like that nerdy site, just how much fun I've had playing a Call of Duty game again. Warzone is such a great reminder of like why I love that series, why I love the gunplay and that, why I love the different weapons that they get to do. Like, it's a ton of fun. It's a blast. It's so smooth. It is like the battle royale mode that I've kind of always really wanted for a battle royale. And then it's a great way for me, very similar to Borderlands last year with Trevor, for me to connect with friends back home now in Missouri who are all playing Warzones, right? They play only 4 games a year, and that's one of them. And then it's like, outside of that, it's an interesting mix of, I'm really, really, really excited to play Hades. Especially as someone who was like a massive fan of Pyre. Like, I loved Pyre. It was one of my favorite games that year it came out. It made my top 10 list easily. And so I'm obviously very excited to see what they do next. And then also curious to see what Final Fantasy VII has in store for it. Curious to see, obviously, the big elephant in the room is like The Last of Us Part 2 and what that looks like for me. But so far this year, it has been such a broad, like, far and away Ghost being the best of the best in terms of everything on tap.
You back with us, Cam?
Yeah, I'm back with you guys. Sorry about that.
Cool.
Yeah,
problem.
it was easy. Took care of.
Cool.
So I appreciate what you said about Ghosts and Warzone. Warzone is a really great game.
It's a ton of fun, right?
It's just fun. I don't actually play it with people, like other friends or anything.
Ooh, you do solos?
I do solos, only solos.
Oh, that's crazy to me. Wow, it's way too tense for me.
Yeah, it's scary, it's frightening, but it's also like, it is also one of, like, when it's finally over, regardless, like, I've never won by myself, obviously. I've gotten super close, like second, third place, etc. But most of the time, like, it's just like, okay, cool. Did I make it to the top 20? Nope. Okay, whatever. Like, it's such a stress relief, like, because, like, you get so tensed up, and then all of a sudden you're dead, and you're like, ah! It's great.
Warzone's great, yeah.
Warzone's really good. It's such a great game. I don't even know how you play it with other people. I just don't know. I see, like, I watch Snowbike Mike play it with the squad all the time, but for me, it's just like, this seems alien. This is a totally different game. Solos can be over real quickly if you're not being smart.
Yeah, I believe that.
Because I take people out who aren't being smart all the time. Anyway, but, like, it's not on my list of top games this year because, like, I don't know, Warzone to me is just like it's a facet of another game as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
I will say a cool game that came out this year that is a battle royale game that's really neat is Spellbreak. That's definitely, like, up there for me this year. I've put a lot of time into it. Let's see. Other games that I really found were top tier, like, really, like, definitely game of the year quality and caliber for me. Doom Eternal is one of them.
Yeah.
Doom Eternal for me is, like, as somebody who really, really loved Doom 2016, getting Doom Eternal where they're like, hey, you know that stuff that made Doom, like, 2016 kind of cool and different? What if we just gave you a ton of that? Also, go ahead and, like, ruin the invasion of Earth by hell by literally going into the depths of hell, to the very heart of it, to murder a dude. It's, like, great. So good.
First story expansion for that came out today.
It did?
As we're recording. Yeah.
What?
Yep.
No way. Yep. I'm just super excited. The story on Doom Eternal is, like, it confirms what we thought. The Doom Marine in Doom 2016 is the original Doom Marine from the first Doom game, Doom 64 to many, which is awesome because it basically means like he's just such a cool legacy character, and it's cool to see him get, like, where it's like, no, like, he is that guy. And by the way, like, this fortress that you're in, the Fortress of Doomitude or whatever it is, so good.
Yeah.
Also, like,
Fortress of Doomitude.
I have to say, like, Doom is a game with a silent protagonist that does it right. Because I don't need to know what he's thinking because he just does it. Like he's very much that's my objective, and I will get there no matter what. And because of that, there's like really cool things, but then there's like little things, like when you go to the one of the worlds and you just like meet that random dude who turns out is like the betrayer or whatever, and he like hands you something, and it's like cool. Like I'll forget about this in like 4 missions because I won't remember it at all, and then it becomes super important later on. It's great.
Yeah. Doom Eternal: The Ancient Gods Part 1 came out today.
Sick.
So you can go get more your Doom Eternal fix for $20 there.
Dude, Doom Eternal, like I just gotta say, like going to like Doom Tech Heaven to fight Doom Tech Jesus, and like was awesome. Like that entire level, like the level design in Doom Eternal is bonkers and brilliant on like a whole different level. Like each level's totally different. Even the 2 levels that take place on Earth feel and play totally different. It's on another level for me of just like incredible, well-designed game from people who have a deep love for this franchise and are just making it be the best that it possibly can be for people who just like to run and shoot, and people who are like I fell deep into the codex on this one, you guys. No joke.
No surprise there.
This titillated all of my lore sensors, if you know what I mean. Anyway, so yeah, Doom Eternal's up there for me as well.
So have we hit on your actual like front runner yet?
I told you guys it's kind of a toss up. It's a dead heat between these games. I'm still struggling whether or not to consider Persona 5 Royale a like.
Yeah.
Do I consider that a new game? But if so, that's the struggle for me.
For me, I would consider it a new game, and I consider it certainly the definitive way to play Persona 5. My problem, and the reason it's not going to be like in the front runner for my game of the year, is that there wasn't like. It was really only like 20 to 30 new hours of game, and I had to, which admittedly, I'm woe is me. But the fact that I had to go through another 80 hours of stuff that I'd already played before, that's what like killed it for me for being in the conversation, really. But it certainly, if people name it their game of the year, I'm not going to fault them. I'm not I get it. I understand it.
I'm sorry.
It's one of those like it's one of those like I wasn't planning on going back into it. But in those early pandemic days where we were like hungry for things to do and play and stuff, I picked it up and just kind of engulfed it over the course of a couple weeks. And yeah, it was the kind of thing that if I could have just played it as like a standalone expansion to the first game, figuring out how to make that work and incorporate like the little story beats that are sprinkled throughout the rest of the game, I would have much preferred that as an experience, considering I already played the game through twice 3 years ago when it originally came out, or 4 years ago when it originally came out. So there just wasn't enough new sprinkled out through the earlier parts of the game to make it a consistently good or fun or new experience throughout. So yeah, that's why I'm not gonna like. It's not gonna be in maybe even my top 5. It might. I mean, it's probably gonna be sitting somewhere in my top 10. But yeah, it loses some points in my mind, I guess, because of that nature of that game.
Yeah, that's fair. So those are our personal Game of the Year update standings, though. But the one now I'm curious about, the final question is, who do we think and what games do we think are going to kind of at the end of the year be in that discussion for winning the 2020 Game of the Year kind of conversation? Trevor, we'll wrap back around to start with you again. Where are you where's your head at in terms of what you think is going to be winning a lot of Game of the Year accolades?
So I have 3. So
I have 3.
All of this is like, I think there are still 2 potential frontrunners to come out, and that's going to be, I think, Miles Morales has potential to like surprise a lot of people as a a next gen launch game, and then Cyberpunk obviously I think
Cyberpunk,
is in the running for a lot of people already as a potential game of the year candidate. But of what has come out so far, the three that we haven't really touched on yet that I think a lot of the industry is going to give accolades to, one is Animal Crossing, because of course that
totally
was
forgot,
the game of the quarantine, and especially with like the recent Halloween stuff that's in there, it is a game that has more or less stayed alive. Like I'm back in, hopping in every day and checking it out and stuff. So that's one, and yeah, just that, like, that is, it's not maybe the best game of 2020, but is the game of 2020, I would say. Fall Guys is another one, because of course that took the world by storm. And as much as like it has fallen out of favor in my own mind, I know that there are a ton of people still chasing those crowns and loving everything that it's doing. And then of course the big the front runner for a lot of sites right now, I'm sure, is probably Last of Us Part 2. And I that's another one. Like, I don't fault anybody that has that opinion, and the people that look at that game as like it changing the medium and stuff. I understand where they're coming from. For me, it was one of those that, like, it just, pacing wise, doesn't, it buckles under its own weight a little bit. And I had issues where I just felt that game is a little too long in the tooth and could have benefited from some editing at a number of points in that game. So it's one, and it's almost like I'm surprised at how little I think about it since it has come out, compared to this time in, what was it, 2013, thinking about how the original Last of Us would have stuck with me. If I focus on and think about Last of Us Part 2, I have a lot of good memories that will come flooding back and stuff, but it's also with a lot of like slow drudging moments that I just wish I could have. I wish had been maybe just cut down a little bit. But I think from a industry wide critical response, I think that's certainly a front runner. If they focus on kind of narrative structure and it's it's a beautiful game, and it's another one that has just incredible moments within the game itself, and incredible performances, and all that stuff. But yeah, it ends up, and it will be, I'm sure, somewhere in my top 10 when all is said and done. It's just not going to be at the top of my charts.
Cameron, what are you thinking?
I have to agree with Trevor on what I think definitively what is probably going to eke out and be kind of the leaders is going to be either, depending on how Cyberpunk comes out, what's the state of it, how it actually plays and plays out, will be one thing. But I think The Last of Us Part 2 is definitely one that, like, we didn't touch on. I think we had a very in-depth spoiler cast about it that we kind of I really raked that game through the coals on some things. If you want to know about it, listen to the spoiler cast. I feel very strongly, and I still feel very strongly about the points that I made. To me, the game is the game tries to do something that is very, very, very difficult to pull off well in storytelling narrative. And that's not even including what they're trying to do as a quote unquote the medium or as a game. Like, there's like, to my points where I had problems are in that spoiler cast. I'm going to put that aside for now. This is a game that definitely, like, a lot of people were like, whoa, when they play this game. It definitely has some of those big, like, wow moments. I think it has some of the most impactful and controversial moments that we'll see out of this year when it comes to video games. There is something very primal and visceral and in your face, which is a weird term to use because we're not in the 90s anymore. We're not in the early 2000s. That's not really something you use to describe
extreme.
Yeah. Because here's the thing. The game was very extreme. It goes into very deep extremes, and it's very much in your face about it. And then the problem and the frustration I have, and this will be just the final thing I'll touch on, is the reason why it didn't work for me is because there's way too much of a of a moral meta-narrative that loses its impact because of a lack of choice. For more details about that, listen to the spoiler cast. But like really, that's where it leaves off for me, is that outside of just also pacing issues. Also, I think it points out a very interesting and pointed look at it's not just like, oh, this game's a Naughty Dog game because it's related to quote unquote quality. It's a Naughty Dog game because there's long, like, obtuse puzzle moments between fighting arenas, and that's very much become kind of like the atypical thing for them. So, on a game design level standpoint, I have to say, like, on like the basic, like, I just ranted about how great Doom Eternal's like level layout is. Naughty Dog's is like almost arcane and archaic in comparison to it. It's just the gap between the design levels on it are just so deep and vast in my opinion. But I do have to say, like, but I mean that's not why you play Naughty Dog games. But I do like it is like at the end of the day, this is the thing. The Last of Us Part 2 is lacking in several ways that, to me, like, I don't even know if it's going to be in my top 10 games of the year. Because I can think of offhand 5 games minimum that are better than it. And I named 3 of them on our way into this. And I haven't played Hatsune Miku, so that might be better than it too.
I think The Last of Us Part 2 is an interesting one for me, obviously. I mean, obviously, timestamp this from like a month from now when I'm probably playing The Last of Us Part 2 or getting ready to.
I was going to say when you still haven't played it.
Yeah, right.
I didn't want to call you out on that one, Logan, but...
But, I mean, I've called myself out on numerous podcasts. But it's one for me and I almost want to do, like, a special, like, random, like, the day before I start playing or something like that, like, do, like, some sort of, like, conversation with one or both of you. But it's one for me where... Obviously, The Last of Us is my favorite game of all time. You're going to meet a few people who are bigger fans of The Last of Us, I think, than me, or at least who champion it as much as I do. But I'm also someone who's never been, I think, who's, like, blinded by how much I love The Last of Us, or certainly I try not to be. And I've obviously had the benefit of, like, 3 or 4 months, whatever it might be, of kind of conversation and discourse around the release of Last of Us Part 2 now. I think that for me, my biggest concerns going into The Last of Us Part 2 is simply the fact that this game seems... I don't know. I think it's a weird thing to say, obviously, because like Neil Druckmann is still involved and is still the creative director, and it's still made by, obviously, people who made the first game. But I worry, having not played it yet, that the game is going to focus on the wrong parts of The Last of Us's legacy and the wrong parts of The Last of Us kind of thematic notes, right? Like, to me, what made The Last of Us so special and so great wasn't that it was this over-the-top, visceral, gory kind of blood fest. That wasn't at the heart of it, right? And I get worried at times when I see kind of these takes flying around on the internet of like how over the top the game is and how extreme X gonna give it to you the game is, and I get worried that, right, like, so for me, such a big part of The Last of Us Part 1, if that's what we're gonna call it, is Joel and Ellie and that dynamic and that relationship, right? And I've had this idea in my head for a little bit, and I kind of formulated more of it when I was like going for a walk earlier this weekend, and I might actually publish it too if I can kind of gather my thoughts together all the way around it, where it's that there's a weird transition that has happened over the last 7 years, I guess, from The Last of Us to The Last of Us Part 2, where it really kind of struck home for me even more playing, obviously, The Last of Us for the first time in 6 years this year, where Joel's the main character of that first game. And it almost felt like the minute that game ended, Naughty Dog began to shift, like, and like begin to like retcon this idea of like Ellie was the main character of the first game, and Ellie's the main character of the series now, and like Joel kind of got more and more pushed away, and like she became like the mascot of the game. And so it's just this weird thought for me of like Joel is so central to the plot of the first game, and I expect him to be significantly reduced in terms of his impact and role in the second game, just by the very fact that you play as Ellie. And so wondering about that disconnect, right? Wondering about that difference between the two games and what his role is and what they make of Joel in this game, obviously, I think is going to be a hard balancing act. And also, I think just inherently the idea of, right, like the Neil Druckmann pitch he gave a few years ago at, I think, PSX of like, the first game is about love, the second game is about hate. And it's like, well, one of those is just inherently more appealing of a story to me, I think. Right? Like the idea of finding kind of these glimpses of beauty, right? And these kind of glimpses of humanity and a story about love in the apocalypse is that sounds super cool. That sounds super appealing. And I love the kind of juxtaposition of that. A story about hate in the apocalypse sounds like a story about the apocalypse that I've already gotten and sounds inherently less cool. And I know that's like a 4-sentence pitch on each of those games, but those are kind of my trepidations when I hear about it. Also, like, they're going to kill Joel, and like, I'm just like, I'm just going to push that aside until we have to do it. But like, yeah, like I'm definitely having my concerns, definitely my worries, and obviously like Cameron talking about it and Trevor talking about it, and the fact that the game is just like double like the first one, and which would make it by far the longest Naughty Dog game, gives me pause at times. 'Cause it's a long time to carry on a narrative-focused story for. But I also kind of agree with Trevor where like I think The Last of Us is probably pretty clearly the front runner for Game of the Year right now. And then I think for like the sites that don't give it to Last of Us, I think it'll be those kind of like right outside, like its lane being like Animal Crossing. I think could get some Game of the Year votes. I think it'd be so cool if Fall Guys got Game of the Year from someone. It would be like Rocket League winning it back when Rocket League came out, and like I would be all for that. I think it'd be such a cool like decision to give it to Fall Guys. I actually, maybe in some sort of disagreement with Cam, I don't know how much I see Cyberpunk winning Game of the Years, but it also could just be that like my faith in Cyberpunk being pulled off, I think, really great. I think it's kind of gone down as we gotten closer to it. I'm a bit more skeptical and cautious on it now than I was probably a few months back, or even like a year ago. And admittedly, I've like never been all the way in on it, but so I'm more hesitant on that one. But I would say, yeah, it's probably going to be The Last of Us. Would be my prediction in terms of what's come out so far.
I think one of the potential interesting things here could be that you could have like a Last of Us and Cyberpunk kind of split that vote.
And Animal Crossing, Fall Guys,
and Animal Crossing or Ghost or Fall Guys kind of sneaks in and takes it as like the winner as a result.
That none of us talked about it. And I mean, me and Kevin, I guess, did in terms of our personal list, but like I do think there's an outside chance that like Ghost wins at a site, right? Because for both the reason you talked about and also because pretty much everybody liked Ghost a lot, right? Like it's that thing like it, and I feel like the discussion around it lasted a long time, and then I feel like I can't remember who on Twitter mentioned it, or it might have even been one of y'all, but like how Ghost releasing Legends right now, so close to kind of the Game of Year conversation again, like having it spark again back in people's minds and kind of in that conversation is really good timing to kind of release its DLC. Like certainly Ghost had far fewer, that I saw at the very least, far fewer and far less kind of divisive Twitter kind of conversations and discourse in The Last of Us Part 2 did, for example, or that I almost guarantee Cyberpunk will. So in terms of kind of bigger AAA games this year, it's one that is going to be significantly kind of less blemished than the other two would be. And so I do think there's a chance that it could kind of slide in and get Game of the Year choices. I would say Resident Evil 3, but we don't need to really get into that.
I feel like Resident Evil 3 didn't make nearly as many waves as
it wasn't as good
as 2 did
good,
last year. Yeah.
I mean, that's like the kind of the shitty part of it. Just like, and like, to be fair, like some could argue that the game they're remaking just wasn't as good. So already had the deck kind of stacked against it. But yeah, that was unfortunate.
Yeah,
I would love
if 2 and 3 had been, I think, as maybe originally intended, a combo pack or like a one package kind of thing. I think that would have definitely blown a lot of people away.
Yeah.
As it is, like 2 certainly blew a lot of people away last year, and then 3 just didn't really build on that, from my understanding of things. And
It's
again,
also-
to Cam's point earlier, like that is one of the last games of the before times kind of thing. So it's so far
long
removed from where we are now that a lot of people are going to forget about that one too.
It's also hard, I think, for Resident Evil 3, where 2 came out and was so great, right, and and like was so good looking and was all this stuff and blew everybody away, and then 3 to some degree just like it did the same thing 2 did in terms of like its style and its gameplay and all that stuff, but we'd already seen it a year before, and then I think it was also a little bit less innovative. Right, like I think a good comparison for Resident Evil 3 remake is actually Yakuza Kiwami 2, where like the first one was great. Like I loved that first Yakuza remake, and it was so good. And I raved about it all year long, and it made me fall in love with Yakuza, and it was in my top 10 list, and I wrote this whole like piece on it and everything. And then the second one came out, and I like infamously gave it like I think a 3.5 or a 4 back when I was at IP. Because it's real bad. And like, to be fair, that was the case where like literally the second one just like ripped out all the new features the first one I put in there, and like it was worse, and like it left all the bad stuff in and didn't put anything good in. And Resident Evil 3 remake wasn't quite as like drastic a change as that, but it still is a thing of like, even if you just do the exact same thing, it's now already been done once, so it's that much less impressive, right? But yeah, I could see, if it's not gonna be The Last of Us, Animal Crossing getting in. I think there's like a not insane chance that like some sites, because of like the way like votes get split and everything gets counted, that like Hades could slide in there, right? Like even in terms of like what I think that nerdy site game of the year will be, I think Hades totally has a chance, because like whenever I play Hades, I will be stunned if I don't love Hades. And then that's 3 of the 4 voting block, right, is already going to be very positive on that game. So that's one that could like slide in if we all kind of deadlock on different game of the year choices. Like I think Hades, I think Ghost for that nerdy for sure is like probably going to be in the top 3, I have to guess. And
I would probably say so,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, and because like at the very least, me and Cam will have it very high. Trevor likes Ghost a lot still too, and then it's just like Frank and him kind of being the outlier on that. But I think Hades could be it for us. I think Ghost could be it for us. I think Animal Crossing potentially. Like I don't really know if Frank played Animal Crossing a lot, but like I know Trevor did. And those are ones that I think would be super interesting, right? Like, and Miles Morales is. I guess this is a not peek behind the curtain. Now we're just having a game of the year conversation about ourselves. Are we rating Miles Morales as like a standalone game for game of the year consideration? Because before Trevor said that, I would have just considered it as not even like an option for game of the year, based on like its weird everything about it.
I mean, Miles Morales is effectively like a Lost Legacy or a First Light kind of thing, which was a standalone product, and it is a standalone product on PS4 and PS5. So yeah, I've been thinking of it as its own game. Like I'm not gonna like the Spider-Man Remastered. I wouldn't say is necessarily game of the year, but even that, like, it's interesting because one of the
new face, not Peter Parker. It's a new game.
There is. Well, but I was gonna say like that one I pulling out of the equation. But like something like Among Us is another game that, even though it came out in 2018, obviously it has blown up in the last 3 months. To the fact that like that could be, not. I don't expect that to be a game of the year winner, but it might surprise people and take overtake a Fortnite or something in the like best ongoing game kind of conversation. Jeff Keighley, when he did We Have Cool Friends with Kind of Funny recently, kind of talked about the idea that like the way they've set up the criteria for the Game Awards is that any game is eligible any year. So like if Among Us got enough votes by its panel, it could theoretically be the Game of the Year winner this year. Again, like it's not. I don't expect we're going to see something like that happen anytime soon. But like with the continuing advent of ongoing games as service types of games, you could theoretically see a Destiny 2 come in and win a Game of the Year years after it is out there, because it is still doing new stuff and completely wowing its audience or whatever. So like Among Us is another one that like I think it's a very long shot, but I would not be surprised to see it pick up some award love from some of the sites, even though it's a 2018 game.
It's a damn good 2018 game, man.
I didn't even know Among Us was from 2018. That's its own revelatory reveal there. Any final Game of the Year predictions, thoughts, anything before we wrap up?
I mean, especially I guess you, Logan, since you are so much more of the Assassin's Creed guy, like, do you think Valhalla has any shot?
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, damn, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I mean,
Valhalla and Watch Dogs Legion comes out at the end of this month.
Watch Dogs Legion has no chance. I think Valhalla, I think it's got a very slim chance. I think part of Assassin's Creed issue is that it's another Assassin's Creed game. I think people will think just like kind of automatically. Like, I think it has to be as big a jump as like Origins or Odyssey. And I don't know if it will necessarily be that for like people who aren't into like Assassin's Creed. I think for me, Assassin's Creed absolutely has a shot to be my Game of the Year. Like, it absolutely can do it. Like in terms of like what is ahead, I would say that is one of the strongest candidates that we have left in the year. Like, I think Assassin's Creed has a better shot to be my personal Game of the Year than Cyberpunk does. Right?
I mean, going back to even that conversation we just talked about, if we kind of as a site say, yeah, you can go ahead and put any game out there as like your top 10, like I imagine Assassin's Creed Odyssey right now is in your top 10.
Oh, absolutely. Assassin's Creed
given
Odyssey,
how much you love that, especially in the early months of the year.
If we're allowed to do our list like that, where it can just be any game we played this year, then Odyssey would be my top 5. I genuinely really, really loved my time with Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And so, yeah, I mean, I could have 2 Assassin's Creed games. But yeah, Valhalla, absolutely. And again, like Miles Morales, again, I'm excited to see like multiple weekly updates on that with Trevor. And I maybe Cameron too. I don't know if you're super excited for it as well, but like that game's gonna be great. My weekly update is mainly just gonna be me swinging around the city, because it's like the most fun thing to do in all of video games, just swing around New York City. But yeah, so like those are the big ones. But like Assassin's Creed for me, yes. In terms of like industry discussion around Game of the Year, I don't think. Like, I think if like Odyssey and Origins didn't do it, I think Valhalla probably isn't going to be able to do it either.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like those tend to fall in the same kind of categories as like your Call of Duties or your sports, like any of your sports franchises. Like, those are really great for what they're doing and the audience that they're trying to target, but they don't typically break into the like Game of the Year conversation.
Which to some degree is unfortunate, right? Like I can think of past, like whether it be Assassin's Creed games, like Odyssey, I think deserved like actual serious Game of the Year kind of discussion. But even like Call of Duty, right? Like Modern Warfare, the first one got, obviously, I mean, it was pretty much like a consensus Game of the Year pick that year it came out. But like Black Ops wasn't, even though I would argue most people now kind of retroactively think Black Ops is like maybe the best Call of Duty game, just kind of flat out. And so it's like, it is that unfortunate aspect of like once you become a serialized kind of entry, you might not get the respect you deserve in terms of the larger industry discussion. But certainly in terms of my personal rankings, like again, like Black Ops Cold War, I'm very curious about that video game. I'm very excited to play it. It's going to be an awesome weekend thing to go through. I'm going to be super interested to see how they pull off its balancing act. And as I've told Trevor multiple times, my most fervent hope for that game is that it's weird as shit, like Black Ops 1 is. I want that game to be weird so badly, even though I'm like 90% sure that they're not going to do it. That's not who Call of Duty is anymore. But like, I want that game to be so weird. But that's another one for me. Like, that will be in my top 10 probably, unless it's like bad. Don't be Ghost, but like that will probably be in my top 10. Assassin's Creed probably in my top 10. Miles Morales has a chance. Like, there are definitely games coming up that can do it, but I think really that we have left, I would say Cyberpunk is like the last big one, and even that I think is going to be too controversial and like too kind of split opinion to probably garner like a consensus game of the year pick for most sites.
Yeah. I imagine Demon's Souls is also going to have a whole bunch of diehard fans when that comes out for PS5.
I think that'll be like Assassin's Creed, where, again, like the people who love that kind of series are going to love it, and people who don't are going to be like, well, okay, cool.
I'm just looking through, seeing any others, like any other honorable mentions. I think Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. I think there's going to be some love behind that.
It's going to be Frank's game of the year.
Potentially, yeah. Then I had I've played a little bit of Crash Bandicoot 4. I think like it's definitely from the little I've played, it's the best Crash Bandicoot game, but that's still not really my cup of tea. So yeah, I think that's there. Ori and the Will of the Wisp, I think, is going to get forgotten and overlooked, and is a phenomenal game. And the fact that it released later in the year on Switch might help breathe some extra life and keep it in the conversation. But also, that ran like crap on my baseline Xbox One. And even though I 100%ed the game, it took like 7 crashes to do so, I think. So like I hope it has stabilized since then, and they've been able to patch a lot of that stuff out. Because Ori is, much like the first game, phenomenal. But I think it's maybe too small of what it's doing to break through some of the other big blockbusters that came out this year.
But that's it. That's all we got to talk about for Game of the Year. That's all of it. No more Game of the Year talk. Now we're in shoutouts. Trevor, you have a shout out this week.
Yeah, I have a couple, actually. I threw in another one here mid-show.
I saw that, yeah.
So first shout-out is if we'd done kind of a normal, news-based that news you care about this week.
Might have been one of the topics.
This is a story I certainly would put out there, because it's one that, like, it broke last week, but I feel like it also kind of, like, snuck under the rug. And it's basically where did I pull this from? The article itself is from Ars Technica. It is titled, "Microsoft will give GameStop a share of Xbox's digital revenues," by Kyle Orland. And it's basically buried within one of the GameStop press releases last week is this partnership that Microsoft and GameStop are doing with next-gen stuff. So Microsoft they're closing down all of their Microsoft stores that were basically the competitor to the Apple stores. So without Microsoft having that, they are partnering with GameStop to kind of work on some of the functionality that those stores served. And part of that deal is apparently including GameStop will get some kind of like revenue share on any digital game sold through an Xbox sold at GameStop. So like if you buy your Xbox Series next gen specifically, so your Series X or your Series S, if you buy them through GameStop, and then you go and buy Cyberpunk 2077 on your Series X digitally, you will some portion of that money, it's unclear how much, is going to go to GameStop because you bought this thing through GameStop. And it's weird that this isn't making as much waves, at least in what I've seen online, because this honestly feels like the most anti-consumer thing compared to everything else gamers have been calling anti-consumer this year, because this like vertical integration effectively is going to see inevitably GameStop pushing Xbox more than PlayStation, because GameStop is going to have a financial stake in selling more Xboxes than they are PlayStations. So it blows my mind that didn't make more waves online, and is just kind of sitting out there. It's also weirdly it's weird because in the film space in recent months, there was a similar deal made between AMC and Universal, where AMC is going to get a cut of the digital rental sales of Universal films, because AMC has basically agreed to let Universal put those things out on VOD after a 3-week run in movie theaters, and just some weird deals are happening as a result of the pandemic and this new digital age. And so seeing this in the game space was one that certainly caught my eye and wanted to bring some attention to. So shout out to Kyle Orland for writing that up over at Ars Technica. And then the other one that I just wanted to give a little shout out to, it's not a story or anything, but as we've been recording this episode, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has been Twitch streaming Among Us for the first time. So you can go follow her at twitch.tv/AOC, and check out what she's doing.
Spoilers, guys, Orange is sus.
I mean, Orange is always sus. But yeah, it's this blew up in the last day or two, and yeah, she went live while we've been recording this. So yeah, shout out to AOC out there trying
Just
to be, accessible to not only her constituency but the broader constituency as a whole. Especially because right before we went live, I got a campaign text from Lindsey Graham that basically was like, "They're outspending me 2-1. Help!"
Are you getting a text from Lindsey Graham?
I don't know.
I get texts from Donald Trump.
I don't know how I got added to this to this kind of mail campaign. I think it's because I mailed or emailed our city council, and I'm pretty sure Guy Phillips, because the first one I ever got was a Guy Phillips one, who for those that don't know, Guy Phillips is the city councilman here in Scottsdale who went viral a few months back by leading an anti-mask protest, by ripping off his mask and saying, I can't breathe, in the wake of the George Floyd stuff. So, disgusting douchebag. And I emailed my city council here in Scottsdale and said, you should all be ashamed. You should be demanding his resignation. And I feel like somehow by doing that, I got added to this stupid list serve thing.
Okay. I gave Joe Biden $10, and I've been getting nonstop texts. The point where I had to block that number.
I certainly gave to a number of Act Blue campaigns and stuff, but I can't imagine they would be selling their lists to Lindsey Graham. So
I mean, they just might be doing it for the lulz at this point. Look at him squirm. I will say though that I was gonna say that. No, I had to block that number because you can't just keep sending me texts and make me think, man, people want to talk to me, and it turns out it's just an auto text.
Oh yeah,
Kamala texted me this morning saying,
I've
"It's
tried
my birthday
blocking
today. You should donate." It's no, this is too much. I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, I've been blocking and unsubscribing from a number of email campaigns and stuff, but texts I can't block a number. I can't block a text number on my phone, so I don't know how to keep those from coming through.
That's it. That's the show.
Anyway, random tangent, but go shout out to AOC on Twitch.
Go shout out to AOC. She's our gamer queen. If you like what you heard, you can go support us over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, like all of our wonderful patrons have. Shout out to them. Trevor knows their names. And they're good people. We love them. Yes, you can go support us. It's
mostly our parents and family members.
You can go support us over there. Like all they've helped keep the lights on for That Nerdy as a whole and make shows like this and like that D+ happen. Go check out all of the tiers and perks you get for being a patron. Again, that is patreon.com/thatnerdysite. You can also go like, subscribe, share with all of the good Chris's out there, not Chris Pratt, on the internet.
Let's be careful with that one.
Chris Pratt's not a good Pratt.
You mean he's not
He's
a good
not
Chris?
a good Chris. You mean?
Yeah. I mean, or a good Pratt, I guess maybe. I don't know.
There's like that's a like. Well,
No, he's Republican crap guy. So
yeah, he's like a weird.
I can like his roles in movies and stuff, but I can hate his personal politics.
There's been some stuff that came out this afternoon from people who know him that are just like, yeah, maybe don't make such like quick assumptions about his politics.
Sure, but then there are also a whole bunch of people kind of like spitting back at that and being like, "Hey, where were all you guys to jump and defend like Brie Larson or any of the other people that weren't white males of privilege?"
I mean, that's fair.
Look, all I know is that just go subscribe to our YouTube channel and our podcast on all the podcast services around the world and tell us what Chris you like. You can also go rate and review us on podcast services all across the internet. And that's it. You can go find Trevor at Trevor J. Starkey on the internet. Trevor, anything you want to say?
No, nothing in particular. Go check out this week's That Nerdy Site show where Logan and I talk about our time with Ghost of Tsushima Legends, as well as random tangent down into a number of sitcoms, including a lot of frustration venting about How I Met Your Mother's finale.
Oh, geez, you guys talked about that?
Yeah, it was really
good.
Yep.
Poof.
You can go find Cameron at Rev Cabot. Cameron?
Hey, everybody, I'm Rev Cabot, and that's because I'm a reverend. I don't got anything going on right now because mostly I'm substitute teaching at a local high school, and I'm trying to be on the down low about it because I don't want them to know about my zany online hijinks that you can check out at Rev Cabot on Twitter.
Rev Cabot, get it done. You can go find me at Lefty Logie on the internet. I will also go plug me and Trevor's conversation about ghosts, but mainly about sitcoms. It was a lot of fun, and maybe, spoiler alert, gave us some ideas for a Patreon exclusive episode coming up that you can go check out. Otherwise, you can go check out That Nerdy Site all across the internet at That Nerdy Site. Go tweet at us, again, all of your thoughts on all of the people out there who are named Chris. Maybe you should know Chris who's your neighbor. Tell us about him. We'd like to know. Otherwise, thank you for playing, and be good to each other.